Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel. Today is the 28th of June, 2018, and you know, this week has not been a slow one when it comes to news, and not just political, not just with the Trump administration, everything going on with that. I mean, like everywhere feels like it's absolutely 100% going crazy. Like this story that popped up just yesterday, where you've got a left-wing media cabal outed, which features 400 members from journalism and academia. Every time a group like this pops up, nothing ever good comes from it. Nothing good ever happens. Nothing of value is ever created. It's always used as a way to control the narrative. We knew about this from back in 2010 with the JournoList. It kind of happened again. Well, then it did happen again in 2014 when the Kyle Orland created GameJournoPro's list was outed. That was basically proven to have been trying to control the narrative of the early days of GamerGate, going as far as to coordinate basically a gift to Zoe Quinn on behalf of this group of people, these people that were meant to be in competition with one another, but were in fact sharing secrets and very much trying to control the narrative. And we're seeing it again with this particular outing, all focused around the writer Jesse Singal. And this wasn't just like he got leaked out with something. This is literally Jezebel breaking this thing down as a way to shame him and probably destroy his career because of opinions that he holds on trans people. And these opinions aren't bad. They're just not the right kind of opinion, I guess. But anyway, this is what the article says. A recent editorial rebuttal was published on Jezebel on June 27th. The rebuttal was against another feature that was published recently on The Atlantic on June 18th by journalist Jesse Singal titled "When Children Say They're Transgender." Jezebel author Heron Walker took issue with Singal's piece that examined some of the controversies within the transgender community. Now, look, I don't want to be that guy, but for a second, I'm going to be that guy. When anyone who is not trans, or I guess you could say maybe even really an ally or a public ally, tries to discuss the trans community, the controversies contained within the trans community, or just trans issues as a whole, it is met with a lot of pushback. Here, what we're seeing is a Jezebel writer who is outright trying to scorch earth of Jesse Singal simply because of the opinions that he espoused in this article that doesn't really come across as if it was going to be attacking the trans community. But then again, any kind of criticism is seen as an outright declaration of war, even though that's usually the most extreme position they could take. Now, it goes on to say here that the story isn't really about Jezebel's rebuttal to the feature, but rather the fact that Jezebel broke a story about another secret cabal of left-wing influencers consisting of 400 members from journalistic organizations, media outlets, and academia, all of whom help dictate the current media landscape of news media consumed by English-speaking readers and viewers. Walker was nonplussed at the very presence of a clandestine group of left-wing journalists colluding to shape narratives in the media, avoiding and passing up every attempt to out its members or discuss the full extent of the secret group. In fact, Walker was more perturbed at the fact that the narrative that other media influencers helped Singal shape wasn't navigated to the kind of ideological island that they wanted. The Jezebel piece provides receipts of the secret Google group operated through a listserv that rolled out various messages across various threads about the topics that the members either discussed at leisure or used to help shape their coverage in the news. Yeah. So what you have here is a GameJournoPro's list, is another journal list. You have influencers. Not a word I'm a huge fan of, but they exist from across the spectrum, from academia, journalism, and they're working together to discuss these topics and craft a narrative. Now, I do want to be fair here and point out that a lot of times, a lot of these people do end up meeting each other throughout the course of their job. They'll go to events, they'll meet other journalists, those journalists might come to their organization or their publication, and then they might leave, and then they still stay in communication with one another. These things happen. It's a part of life. You meet people, you remain friendly with those people. But if you're using this particular Google group with 400 members as a way to craft any kind of narrative, then that is something that does need to be exposed. It really does. If you're trying to falsify stuff or change the course of certain things, using your position inside the media, that does need to be outed. We do need to have a more transparent media and a more transparent, push, or I guess I should say a harder push for more transparency, simply because that is going to be easier for everyone else involved to trust the media. The trust with the traditional news is at an all-time low because of shit like this. And we've seen this. And the thing was, when GameJournoPros happened back in 2014, no one really cared, essentially. No one really gave much of a shit outside of Gamergate. But we saw what they were doing there, and we know that they're still doing it. And so, yes, Jezebel should have exposed these people for being part of this group, provided that they were 100% trying to dictate the course of a narrative. If that information is there and they're trying to work together to collaborate to run a multi-publication spin on a subject, then yes, totally expose that, because that should not be happening. It shouldn't be. But they didn't, and they probably won't, because that would then hurt their allies and then give people who criticize the media, like Donald Trump and the Trump administration and his particular followers, as well as rational people who just aren't happy where things are at, the ammo they need to further put a dent in the trustworthiness of the media. The sad truth of this particular story is it's going to get swept under the rug. People are going to forget about it. People are going to move on. And that's a shame, because we need this kind of transparency. And ultimately, we need this level of disclosure to further reinforce the trust of the media. The people who tell us what's going on, we have to know that they're trustworthy. If they're not trustworthy, then what the fuck are they doing here? Speaking of transparency and just being open about things, Google's not necessarily the most transparent company out there, but occasionally certain things leak out. Last year, we had James Damore and the Google Memo, which was completely misinterpreted by many people who read it, so much so that he went on a speaking tour with an evolutionary biologist as a way to further explain what he was attempting to say and to translate engineer terminology to layman terminology. It was a fascinating discussion at Portland State University earlier this year, and I recommend finding videos of that if you possibly can. But back on Google. Google has another memo that's come out now, and this one is not good. This one's actually pretty damn frightening, because it says here, Google to employees, be nice to each other or else. Discrimination, harassment, doxing, name-calling, trolling are off the table at Google, which has revised its internal code of conduct. Now, don't get me wrong. At no point do I ever support any kind of harassment or doxing or trolling while you're at work. I mean, oftentimes people become friendly with one another and they might troll one another in that regard, which probably is going to get them in more trouble often than not. But the fact of the matter is, it's, no, these things are bad. You don't want to do these things. I get it. But it feels really weird when it's in a memo. You know what I mean? It feels really weird when Google's like, be nice to each other or else, where Netflix is like, don't look at each other for more than 5 seconds or else. It's that or else that I don't like. It's the constant finding a way to divide people into their own groups. People naturally self-segregate. They do. This kind of, I don't want to call it authoritarian takedown or a push for these type of new rules is going to further that, but it's not going to cause any kind of unity. I'll tell you that. It's going to keep people to their separate corners, and they're just going to keep in their own little groups. And that is not how societies or companies grow and build. That really isn't. But because they don't want to get, caught up in this whole nonsense with the way things have been in regards to the Me Too movement and the attack on STEM and saying that there's not enough women. Never mind the fact that 25% of all STEM degrees are awarded to women, and only 25% of women working in STEM are those who get those degrees. So the numbers kind of even themselves out, right? Again, no one ever wants to look at it like that, but they just want to make sure that Google knows, or Google wants to make sure their employees know that they can't get away with this kind of shit. Google's new revised code of conduct, according to Wired, follows a petition signed by over 2,000 employees demanding a safer, friendlier work environment. This has been published in part of the new guidelines. The company has officially warned its employees about behavior on internal bulletin boards. From now on, Google employees have to be respectful to each other and avoid blanket statements about groups or categories of people. Steer away from ad hominem attacks. Discrimination, harassment, doxing, name-calling, trolling are all off the table too. The portion of Google's internal code of conduct that has been made available to the public does not mention what constitutes any of the above, so there seems to be a lot of room for speculation. Yeah, there's always a lot of room for speculation. We deal with this here on YouTube as well. when YouTube has these guidelines, these things you can and cannot do, but they're so broad, they're so vague, we never fully know exactly what they're up to. We never fully know what's going to get us in trouble. I mean, just yesterday, the video that I posted covered Charlottesville. That video was demonetized until this morning. Thankfully, somebody approved it. But even this week, starting this week, I've had to manually monetize my videos by basically pledging and swearing that I am within the advertiser-friendly guidelines, even though those guidelines tend to, shift depending on who has the ads that are going up. And it becomes this very, very, very complicated and convoluted situation that ultimately just causes more stress. What this kind of code is going to do, and I'm not saying I'm against it, by the way, clearly no harassment at work. I completely agree with that. But when people joke around because they're friendly, and joking, especially amongst males, causes bonding. That's one of the key factors of bonding with your friends. It's like that old saying, I wouldn't make fun of you if I didn't like you. Right? Like there's that back and forth constantly. And that is going to be pushed out the window for these new types of narratives because people are also going to be afraid that if they step out of line, they're going to lose their job and get fired. And when they're so vague, when those rules are so vague, it feels like anything can be a misstep. Anything can be, can cause you to get a demotion. Anything can be a demerit. It almost comes across like the freaking anti-swearing laws and Demolition Man, except with those, you know what to expect. Here, you don't. It creates a boogeyman, which kind of goes with you everywhere. Right? Because it's not just going to sit there and apply to the internal message boards. It's going to apply to, any kind of group outing. Anyone at work is out there speaking their mind off the clock. If someone hears about it, it's going to be known as the same thing. You know how far this goes. It becomes a huge slippery slope when it's not properly defined. But they also want to give themselves enough wiggle room so then, they can get around certain things if they have to, probably depending on who the particular person is that might have committed the infraction. Either way, this is just another step backwards that Google is doing, that Silicon Valley and the tech world is doing as a way to combat a lot of these problems. And I'm not saying that there aren't issues that do need to be addressed, but when it's so blanket and it's so vague, it's not very good. And I guarantee you the employees are going to be thinking very, very, very similar to that. And finally today, guys, oh boy, YouTube is in it again. I feel like every week there's a new controversy coming out of YouTube. This is one that's clearly probably closer to my heart than it is to yours, but you should be aware of it anyway if you do make content for this platform, or if you happen to like anyone who does. And if you are here watching this video and you've gotten to this point, I'm going to say that there's people that you watch who make content, especially me. Like, comment, and subscribe. But that being said, YouTube's under fire because they killed some creators' custom-made thumbnail images in their latest experiment. Posting here, what difference can a thumbnail make? Well, a lot, actually. You very much want there to be a good-looking thumbnail. That's something that everyone on this platform, 100% of the time, is always dealing with. I have a thumbnail template, but when I go to create a thumbnail, there are times when that's not always going to be the best thing. That's not always going to end up being the best thumbnail for the story, because sometimes you just don't have an image you can use, and you have to convey it in a way that's going to be not only eye-catching, but appropriate, because you don't want to lie. So even this particular story, the YouTube logo would be in it, but what else? Right? Like a thumbnail, a custom thumbnail with a X'd out sign through it or something like that. I mean, this is kind of how things go, but people are always experimenting because an eye-catching thumbnail will get you more views than not. And that is, again, something that everyone on this platform 100% deals with all the time. And so when they remove the ability for custom thumbnails for some kind of experiment, it does feel like a slap in the face when you spend a lot of time working on thumbnails, like many of us do. It says here, for YouTube creators, catching the eyes of potential new viewers starts with a good custom thumbnail. It's a skill many video makers have honed over time, even making the effort to teach other creators what makes an appealing image. High quality images of faces, bright backgrounds, concise text. Currently, however, YouTube is testing out a feature that hopes it will improve auto-generated thumbnails, a move that has some creators on edge. And I understand that. I understand that move would get some people on edge. When I was at VidCon, I was talking with someone about thumbnail creation, and he brought up the auto-generated thumbnails that happen when you upload a video. It usually gives you a selection of 3. I always thought it was just random intervals in the video, but apparently the algorithm will detect when your face is the most expressive. And this is what they believe would be an ideal thumbnail so in order to attract new viewers. I'm not even kidding you. That's what he told me. And it ultimately makes sense because we are attracted to people's faces, not always the most attractive faces like this one, but just general faces. We like to see that. So it does help in the psychology of viewing when it comes to picking out a video. And we can understand why, YouTube might want to be trying to find a way to better enhance this feature. But when they don't tell you and when they don't explain it properly, it does become a bit of a pain in the ass. Now, it goes on to say here that over the next few weeks, YouTube will be running an experiment in which 0.3% of viewers will see auto-generated thumbnails rather than the creator's custom-made images. They say here, we are not removing the ability to create your custom thumbnail, but we hope to gain insights on auto-generated thumbnails in the future, the company clarified. Another rep on Google's product forums pointed out that good auto-generated thumbnails is a top request when we get from creators who use them. The feature may be temporary, but online creators are already voicing serious concerns. Many say they're frustrated with the lack of transparency about the experiment. Others point out how much time they put into their thumbnail images, or even the money they spend on paying others to do the same. Like I said, people take thumbnail very, very, very seriously. It's almost as important as the video itself, right? Like I sit here in front of a camera, talk to you guys, that's it. But I still need to have an interesting thumbnail in order to kind of get you in the door. And if that's not there, then that's a problem, right? That's a pretty big problem. But ultimately with this particular situation, it's only 0.3%. So, and it's only viewers. And I don't know, you could be watching one of my videos and just see a generated image of me going, or something along those lines, because that's what they might be viewing as a good thumbnail in order to bring in more viewers. Everything YouTube does is supposed to be to bring in more viewers as a way for them to then make more money. This platform reaches 1.5 billion people per month. It does 1.5 billion. And over the course of the next 2 years, another 3.5 billion people are going to come online. YouTube is doing everything it can in order to facilitate that growth of potentially new clienteles. And this is one of the things that they're doing. I'm not too worried about it. If it's only 0.3%, that's not very much. And the idea there is once you get in the door with the thumbnails, it's the content that keeps people coming back. It's the personalities. It's the presentation. It's what they do. There's a reason why you guys come and watch my videos every single day. It's probably not because of my thumbnails. It's because of this. I'm so awesome. You can admit it. It's fine. I'm only blushing a little bit. But no, that being said, it's really, I don't think that big of a deal, but people are freaking out about it. And I do believe that there is a valid argument there for the, can we opt out of this, or should you ask us to opt in before just making this particular experiment and not telling everyone, therefore causing a fervor, which again is a very valid argument. And I do think that ultimately they should ask people for their permission or give them the option to opt out first. But that being said, what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on these particular stories? Is that the new, trans JournoPros list? I don't know what there's a name for it. This seems like a good enough name. Is that going to be something worth exposing, something worth seeing their names out there, so we know who's involved and how ethical and transparent they are in terms of their job? What do you think about Google's new memo to not be mean or else? And do you really give a crap about YouTube thumbnails? I actually, that one I'm legitimately curious on. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been the Mundane Matt channel. If you haven't already, please thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel. Check back often for more content from me. If you want to buy merch, you can do that right below. Haha, yeah, technology. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.